It's great to be here. Um, Productivity, engagement, those seem to be the things that we're talking about all the time. And in every conversation with leaders, this is coming up. And there's lots of reasons for that, but primarily because the employment landscape has changed. COVID has really changed things for all of us. So it's changed how our organizations are running. Our priorities have often changed, how we lead people when they're remote or hybrid, that has changed. What people need has changed, mental health, family dynamics, all of these things are adding to people really looking at what they're doing, looking at their lives and asking themselves questions, and people are making changes. So that's where we get into the great resignation, and people really taking this opportunity to think about, who am I and what do I want to do? Where do I want to put my time and energies? And so all of this is making a significant disruptor into our organizations. And so as organizational leaders, we want to talk about, how do we encompass our organizational mandate? How do we look at what then the skills and training that might be required for leaders, for our employees, because our roles might have changed. And this has, added in the uncertainty of the financial landscape, our reliance on donations. All of these things add to, some uncertainty and a little bit of confusion. And employees are then asking questions about, how do they fit in? What does their role mean? How does it make a difference in the big picture? And it can create question, and it can lead to a lack of understanding, a lack of communication, and that creates strain on organizations, and it's hard to know how to lead in that. And not surprisingly, there's a study that came out recently by McLean and Company, which is now saying that recruitment is one of the top priorities for HR leaders. And the organizations are spending like 25% of their time on talent acquisition. And so when you're bringing in new staff and you're onboarding and you're trying to figure out, are they remote? Are they in the office? How do you create a sense of team and engagement in that? It's no wonder that we're not seeing the same level of engagement and productivity. So people might have lost sight of what a win is, to know how what they're doing makes a difference in the bigger picture of the organization. Sometimes that can lead people to focus on the wrong things or to become distracted. That can lead into cynicism and negativity. And organizations may not have been communicating well through this time of, things changing. They're not sure what to say to their employees. And then employees can start making up a story in their heads about what might be going on. And we may not have looked at the job requirements, and maybe things have changed. Maybe roles have changed. Maybe skills and competencies have changed. And so all of this has contributed to a reduced engagement, reduced productivity, which ultimately means many organizations may not be delivering as effectively as they might have 3 years ago. And then we're all asking big questions about, what do we do about it? And that's how we came to today.
Thank you so much, Katie. That really puts it in context. So we're making maybe a broad assumption here that a major issue with productivity is a waning in employee engagement. And I wanted to pose the first question for the panelists in this way. Describe an example of poor employee engagement that you have seen recently or experiencing in the workplace. And I'll pass it to Jen first to reply.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. I think that there are almost so many examples that it's hard to illustrate one. I think what it comes down to is just a total lack of connection and engagement. I think that there's a very challenging dichotomy that exists where we want to see productivity from employees. And what starts to happen in a remote environment is sometimes people start to create a sense of mistrust in an organizational culture. People feel sort of policed, or people feel a false sense of flexibility, which I think can happen in a lot of organizations. And I believe what truly drives productivity is connected and engaged employees. And when we look at connection and engagement, I tend to look at it in 3 buckets. You look at how the team is engaging with one another as one cohesive team, whether or not they feel like they're part of a big unit and team. I tend to look at how someone connects and engage with their role in the big picture. What is the long range, the short range? What are the operational outcomes? And what is their work doing to contribute to specifically to that? And the last one is at a leadership level, how you connect and engage with people. And that happens and can only happen, in my opinion, one-on-one. And it has to happen at every level of the organization. That becomes more challenging in really large organizations, but it's still possible. And so to me, those three pieces make up a connected, engaged environment where people are highly productive, and they're productive in their own right, because they want to be, because they feel compelled to the mission, they feel connected to others, and they feel connected to leadership and the vision.
That's great, Jen. Thank you so much for that great reply. Over to Jennifer, or sorry, Kimberly, do you want to reply to that as well?
I'd love to add to and echo Jennifer's input. As an organization, we have recognized the importance of our employee engagement and volunteer engagement from prior to COVID. We actually have had an established position for culture, a director of culture. And I think that has been instrumental in helping us. There are official policies and a person responsible for leading change in this way. And it comes about because of my desire to make sure that people are feeling connected. So Jen, I completely agree with what you're saying there, not just with each other, but to the mission. What is it that I do in my work that helps the whole organization achieve the shared goal? And I personally do what you've suggested, Jen. I attend meetings at all levels. I speak to people face to face. I visit, various teams and talk about with genuine enthusiasm. I think that's really important as well. As long as we at the top feel the same passion for our work that we want our employees to feel, I think that comes through. And so with that same passion, I speak with people about what's coming, because lots of the people who work in our organizations don't have sight about what we're planning and what's coming in the pipeline, and who our new connections are and what milestones we've just achieved. And so we also make sure that we have a common communication thread where we celebrate any milestone from any department, so that people are aware of what's happening, whether that be a major donor gift from a new donor that we haven't seen before, or whether that's because we've just finished the closed-in shell of a building in Bala. And this challenge of remoteness, I guess for us, I think I should say for everybody on the call, we may have been just slightly ahead of the game, because our territory that we cover is 232,000 kilometers, and that's approximately the size of the UK. So we were already operating, remotely from one another, and putting things in place to make sure that we knew each other and we were communicating were really important. Another thing that we've done is create a standing in-person meeting in a central place where we gather for informational updates and a structured agenda morning and afternoon. But in the middle for lunch, it's informal and food is provided, and it's, talking and networking and mingling and laughing. And I think that's the other part of culture, aside from the obvious ones: communication, inclusivity, making people feel important, ensuring that people feel important to the mission, but also making sure that levity is part of the culture. Not only is it allowed, it's encouraged. I think when in a not-for-profit, I'm sure that I'm speaking for all of us here, we tend to ask more than what we can give. And the kinds of people who join not-for-profits are by nature willing to do that. They want to do that. They give as much as they possibly can in exchange for less compensation and benefits than they could get in other sectors. And so we want to make sure that that's appreciated and celebrated. And so we do that actively.
Great. Well, we jumped right into the solutions. I was
sorry.
hoping to describe the problem first, but
Okay.
let's circle back to some of those solutions, Kimberly, in a few minutes. So we're still trying to describe what is the problem, and so let me move to the next step and ask you, the problem as you've described it, the two of you, what kind of impacts are you seeing? What kind of behaviors, what kind of challenges are you seeing as it manifests in your organization? So again, just stick with describing what you're seeing. And then the last question to kind of focus on what good solutions, where we revisit some of those good solutions. But at the moment, maybe I can start with Katie to just kind of touch on what impacts are we seeing and behaviors are we seeing that are challenging for us as an organization.
Yeah, and I'm happy to comment on that. I think it's sometimes important to remember that, you know, when people are not engaged and then ultimately not productive, it's not usually because that's what they want. Might not even be aware that that's what's going on. It can be this kind of slow breed that looks like apathy, that looks like cynicism, that looks like just not having a spirit of generosity about other people's intention or what might be going on. And so I think that's just important to remember. That's not, people don't normally wake up in the morning and say, how can I go to work and be apathetic today? And, you know, so then the benefit of that is it helps you realize that, oh, then these are things that can be turned around, because people really do want to be able to contribute in positive ways and have be a part of a significant team and feel like they're doing something with the 8 hours of their day that they're putting into work.
For sure. Jennifer?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it tends to look like a lot of complacency and disengagement. And, you know, I'm proud to say that I focus really heavily on culture and that level of engagement. So I'm speaking more to what I hear and see and observe sort of sector wide. But I think that there are, you know, it's exactly as Katie said, nobody wants to be disengaged. Nobody wants to be unmotivated. Nobody wants to feel like they don't have a lot of clarity in their position. And sometimes that leads to that sense of complacency or confusion, lack of connection to the cause. And all of those things sort of steamroll or a slow burn into somebody feeling like they're just not that connected to what's happening. I think that one of the things when we dial back to, you know, what does this really look like? One of the things that I do see a lot in workplaces is that meetings, remote meetings, virtual meetings have become really just about business. Now, when we were in person, what happened was you might go to a business meeting, you would spend, you know, a bit of time or a lot of time building connections and engaging with people. And when you weren't in that business meeting, you were mingling around an office. You were at, you know, the cliche of a water cooler, doing whatever you did to make your rounds and talk to people. And what's happened is we're starting to see where meetings are just about business. If meetings are just about business, and people are somewhat more, I could say, almost private or protective of their time when they're working from home. So they feel the need to contact somebody first and say, is it all right if I give you a call? Whereas if you were in an office, you would just walk into somebody's office and say, hey, how's it going? Can we have a chat? So I think that type of disconnection is really, for me, front and center in terms of some of what that problem is, that we're not creating the space for people to really connect as humans before they connect as professionals.
Agreed. Kimberly, anything to add to that? Just how it's resulting, how you could describe?
Yes, I think too, it's important to, like, in the answer to the question, to say that the organization really has to care enough to be on the lookout for these symptoms, because I think sometimes they can be missed. I'm thinking of recent examples in our organization, and some are very direct, like a question directly posed to me about, you know, when is my salary going to be increased? That's a hint to me that, you know, the motivation might be down. I need some help here. But it can also happen in quiet ways, like, you know, a missed deadline from someone who doesn't usually miss a deadline, or a really good work producer submits something that's substandard. That's unusual, right? And it could be in gossip, you know, it's sort of thing like so-and-so said this or that, or you hear that someone's looking for a job, you know, and if you're attentive to that, I think that can really help. You can sit down with people and I think speak openly with, you know, what might be happening. Could they talk about, you know, anything that needs improvement in their work life that we can help them with? So really take a supportive approach and always be open to feedback.
That's great. Well, look, and I'm going to have my last question here, but just as I do that, any of you who are on the call, if you have a question that you want to pose to one of the panelists, just stick it in the chat. I'll take a few minutes right at the end here before we wrap to pose one or two of the questions from those of you on the call. So even if it's to clarify something that someone has said or an additional relevant question on this topic of employee productivity. So let me ask finally to all of you, and you've alluded to some of these. Kimberly, Jennifer has alluded some great things, but what would be one strong approach that you have seen or are seeing to get ahead of this challenge that you're using? What are some examples of that? Katie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, no, I can certainly add to that. And I would just echo things that have already been shared by Jennifer and Kimberly. But I think there's lots of great things that leaders can do. And it doesn't have to be, a total overhaul of all the things. It can start with that connecting with one-on-one with each person, help each person feel seen for who they are, not just what they do, help each person see that they matter in the big picture. And it's not the kind of thing you just say once, but you're talking about regularly so that people really have that connection spelled out for them. Understand what each person really loves about what they do. Where do they come alive? And is there ways that you can continue to encourage that or provide opportunities in that vein? Help them really lean into that. And then do the same with the team. Ask those same questions and help cultivate that water cooler conversation that Jennifer was talking about, because those things happen naturally in person. And also just name the hard things. It's okay to say that you're noticing, lack of engagement, or you're noticing, we're not just, maybe we're not operating at our best. And it's not being said in a reprimand type of way. It's being said in a, we're in this together and we're naming this thing that everyone's probably aware of, and that there's a commitment to really pay attention to that and to listen, get feedback, as we were just talking about there, and that together we can be cultivating a culture where everyone is feeling valued and engaged and is able to bring their full self into what they're doing.
Right on. Jennifer?
Yeah, I love what Katie was saying there. So for me, I'm going to try to drill into a few really specific examples that I do and what we bring into our workplace. And it's all about creativity and connecting with enthusiasm with people. So there's a whole range of examples. So let's say at the leadership level, when we host leadership meetings, we don't talk about business. And so when I first actually came to Parks and Rec, it was a funny conversation because they said, okay, the leadership meetings, we need to have an agenda. And I said, no agenda is necessary because we're just there to connect as humans. If we roll into a little bit of business in the last 15 minutes, great, but we're carving out time to know one another. I do deep dives with every staff in the organization, whether you're a senior leader or you just started in one of the more junior roles 3 months ago. I drive to where you live and I spend 3 hours having coffee, having lunch at your favorite spot, drilling into everything that you think and feel about the organization, about your work, about where you want to go professionally, personally, all of it. I also do things like on people's birthdays, I record little video messages and I send them to every staff in their birthday. And I have a wonderful employee who does lead the charge on a lot of these kinds of activities and helps program that into my calendar so that it happens. At staff meetings, we create a lot of fun, even remotely. It's as much about fun and connection as it is about business. And we create an opportunity to celebrate in a really sincere, authentic, vulnerable way, like birthdays, where we light a candle on a screen for each person at their birthday. And we pass the candle around and share something with each person that we value in the person that we're celebrating. And a lot of the time that can be vulnerable and real, and there's tears and people feel so seen. The end of the day, the more you think about creative ways to help people feel seen, like they matter and like their voices count, people will love working with that team. They'll love doing what they do, because that's all we really want as humans, is to connect. Everybody wants to connect. So I think our jobs as leaders to connect as best we can and create better opportunities for others to do the same.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Jen. Kimberly, last kind of examples of what you're doing?
I'm not going to repeat what everybody has said. I agree completely, but I do have something to add, and that would be an example in our organization of empowerment throughout the organization, throughout the leadership levels. So communication that this is important And my personal behavior is extremely important as an example, but we take our decisions and our efforts towards all the things Jen was just talking about, and we put them in policy. We write them into performance appraisal templates so that the performance appraisal is not just about the employee's performance, but also about the employee's goals, the employee's performance development needs. It's that kind of thing, but it's all structured throughout the organization so that everyone can learn how to do this. Because I think most people would agree that it's important, but probably a lot of people in management or supervisory positions are going, I want to, but I'm not sure how and where to spend my time. So that communication and that structure is important too.
Thank you so much. Dave or Katie, I know Katie's going to summarize. Dave, do you have any comments here at the end here?
Yeah, I think what I've heard today, and thank you all for sharing, this is authentic leadership. This is being intentional. And I think all three of you, particularly Jen and Kim, as you lead as CEOs of organizations today, the authentic leadership is so desired. And that's the kind of commitment that employees are going to be attracted to, and they're going to engage with. And so just appreciate all that you guys are doing. And Katie, certainly you're seeing this with various organizations, obviously in your work as well. So I'll pass it back to you, but yeah, that's the thing that's standing out is the authentic leadership, the intentional leadership, and the openness really that comes in that type of relationship with employees from a leadership perspective. So thank you very much, Katie.
Great. So just before Katie does a quick summary, Will has posted a question that I'd like to pose to anyone that wants to respond. He says, I'm keen to model this in our not-for-profit. We have a small team of about 8 employees on this journey together. Is there a book or a podcast that he even says a TikTok, that'd be a quick learn, but is there any kind of quick resource that you want to leave with the participants online that's helped you? Maybe Jen and then Kimberly and then Katie can wrap.
Yeah, I would say one of my favorite ways to spend my time when I'm trying to learn around culture is Gary Vaynerchuk. So, he's an influencer that demonstrates what employee engagement can look like with thousands of people. He frequently takes his phone out and plays a little game where he scrolls through his phone, closes his eyes, and then whoever it lands on, he calls to talk to them and thank them for working for his company. And I think that type of intentional engagement is really cool, and you can find that from Gary. And then the other thing is just there are some great resources. There's a group called EPIC that provides a lot of nonprofit resources, more on the side that Kimberly spoke to around policy, because she hit the nail on the head. It's great to have that kind of top-down authentic leadership, so important, but it's also really important to back it up with the policy process workflow of how you're organizing things. So if you go to EPIC, I think they have a Facebook group, and then as well on LinkedIn and their website, they've got thousands and thousands of resource database available for people to access.
Awesome. Kimberly?
Yes, from my point of view, Jennifer, I agree with those suggestions. I'm just going to add that very commonly in not-for-profit, we're always, looking to partnerships. And I've got, in my network, and Will, this is what I would suggest, find and meet people who you trust, who know something about the subject, who've had success with the subject, people who will take your call, who will discuss things with you, because it is one thing to listen and read. It's another thing when someone's providing active input, to real life issues that are happening for you. So I would go to that extent as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Katie, do you want to summarize, maybe if you have a resource, but then just a high level summary of what are the best solutions that we can kind of have as takeaways today?
Yeah, for sure. I think those were great suggestions that were just shared there. One book, and there's so many, but one book that I have found really impactful, even just this year, reading it in light of this kind of cultural moment we find ourselves in, is Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. So a social scientist using real research, working with organizations around the world, really diving into this theme of how do you really help people understand that how seen they are and what they really love and what they loathe. That's the other term he uses. So anyways, I would highly recommend that, or following him on Instagram. You can get the Cut & Close note that way too. In terms of summary, I think, you've heard some really two key themes here. We've heard about how important it is to really help each person feel seen, feel like they matter, feel like they're really clear on what it is that they're doing, and how they're able to use their gifts in that way. So I think that is one of those low-hanging fruits of things that you can open up your calendar and you can book those meetings with the people that report to you, to model that so that they can then do that with the people who report to them, and set up those meetings so that you create that time and space. And another practical piece you can do with that is also just 2 simple questions every week is what are your priorities for this week, and how can I support you? So you don't have to come with all the solutions. You can ask those questions that are really simple and really practical, that helps the employee feel empowered and supported. And you're doing your job at helping to remove barriers or offer encouragement or whatever it is that they need. And then the other piece we heard here, again, Kimberly really spoke about that, is the looking at them, what are your policies and procedures, and what are they doing that are either enhancing and supporting this culture that you're really trying to execute, or is it hindering? If you talk about wanting to empower people and yet you have policies that are very top down and double check with this person and you have to do things exactly this way, well, that's then sabotaging your attempts to want to have a more open culture where people are really able to bring themselves and feel empowered and to do the things that the way that they would do it, to execute the things that you want them to do. So taking a look at those policies and procedures, using things like goal setting and reviews are really, again, low-hanging fruits on ways that you can help achieve the things that you want to achieve. So that would be a quick summary of what we've talked about here.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. So good, such amazing nuggets here. So we want to thank you, each of the participants that have joined us today on the panel. Thank you so much. Each of you online that have joined for the Lunch and Learn. Hope that you've been able to take away those good nuggets and just to implement them on your teams. We believe in what you're doing. We believe in leadership in nonprofits and charities, and want you to succeed. But last thing, I just want to invite you, we're going to do one more of these before the year end, at the end of November. We'll send the invite out to you. It'll be actually on the topic addressing the challenges of nonprofit leaders to secure sufficient revenue in an inflationary environment. And so we want to speak to, we're going to invite some panelists that can speak to that and discuss some best case scenarios and solutions that you might consider for your team as well, and invite you to invite your development officers to join, and others that have the relationships with partners. Lastly, I just want to finally just remind you, Katie on our team here is a certified HR specialist. And if there are any of these issues that you want to just talk further with her about, she is available. I'm going to ask Sharon just to post her email in the chat there for you. If you want to just a complimentary call with her and just to talk about some of the issues privately that you might have related to your people strategy and how it can better align with your organizational strategy, please feel free to reach out to her. And lastly, within the next hour, you're going to receive a feedback survey. And it's truly just a blessing to us to be able to give us some feedback on this, our first run of these Lunch and Learns on the productivity of our employees. But we just want to learn from you. And it's just a quick survey. It'll probably take you 5 minutes to complete. If you don't mind just doing that by the end of today or early tomorrow, that would be great. Give us some feedback to improve for next time, like maybe end on time. But we've done our best to kind of tighten it up here today for you, but give us some feedback on what would benefit you the most. So just to wrap our time, pass it over to Dave to wrap here today.
Sure, great. And trying to be timely. Thank you just again to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees today. At Cause Leadership, we really are about leaders and the people that they lead. And we look forward to the opportunity to continue engagement with you either through webinars or in person or at other events over the next few months. But this won't be the last time you hear from us. And so we look forward to engaging with you again. And just thank you again for your participation.
Thank you very much. All the best. Have a great week.
Thank you.